Oh, it is a pleasure to be joined by San Francisco Giants legend and more importantly, a gentleman who's going to be on the North Coast this weekend talking Cal Poly Athletics, Jeremy Affeldt. Jeremy, appreciate you taking time and helping the cause for the Lumberjacks.
Thank you, man. I'm happy to. I was pretty excited when they reached out, and athletes, student athletes, kids, man, that's a big part of what I kind of push when I go out and speak, talking about dreams, but also talking about how I can influence them at an early age and try to make the most of their sport and make the most of their mental makeup, which I think they struggle with, especially in high school, college. So I'm excited to be able to be there.
Yeah, we're hearing more and more about just people are more self-aware and mental health and all that sort of stuff. How has athletics become maybe more important, or how can athletics help kids, whether it's the little league t-ball level and then of course all the way up through the collegiate level, and for some fortunate few to get to the pro level? But it's really it's all encompassing now.
Yeah, when it comes to sports, man, like I feel, one, it is a great mental training for your life, to be honest with
Absolutely.
you. Baseball and golf are probably, for me, some of the biggest mentally tough sports out there, but all of them, my son doesn't play either of those. My oldest, he plays football and basketball, mainly football. And I get to watch that scene and just still trying to deal with some of the same concepts that I dealt with at not just the big league level, but the minor league level. And looking back at the high school level, even if I would have known some of the things that I know now on how sports should be taught, or how the thought process, of sports should be taught, it would have helped me a lot more. And one of the main things that I'll probably get into a little bit is controllables and uncontrollables. But if you can get athletes to understand that and be good at that concept, whether they make it in sports or not, if they can grab that concept at their level in sport and become good at it and understand it and use it in their sport, when they go on to other things in life, whether it be family, whether it be marriage, parenting, work, dealing with other employees, dealing with their peers, it's all about controls and uncontrollables. And our biggest pitfall is probably when we start focusing on an uncontrollable too much. But sports, and if you want to be good at sports, actually forces you to not think of an uncontrollable. And the ones that are good at it only deal with controllables. And I think that's kind of where I think sports should be geared towards, and especially in these young minds.
Well, what advice would you give to young student athletes or people in the professional world dealing with uncontrollables, and they come home after a long day and think, oh man, there's nothing I can do and I'm stuck and maybe I just need to jump ship?
Yeah, I think especially in the young minds, they're the uncontrollable is like the world's over. Like, I went 0 for 4 today, I want to quit, because everybody probably thinks I'm the worst player ever. Where if they could really see it, everybody goes home or goes to their dorms or gets on their buses. They don't think about your 0 for 4. Nobody does. Nobody thinks about your 0 for 4 that day, right? There could be a big scenario. Oh man, I had bases loaded, ninth inning, struck out. I'm the worst player on the planet. No, you just struck out with the bases loaded on the ninth inning. It didn't work out. Someone's got to win. Someone's got to lose. A good coach and a good team does not go to bed at night thinking, I have the worst player on my team ever. He struck out with the bases loaded. They don't think that way. But the athlete thinks that. The athlete says, I'm a bad player. I'm a terrible player. I'm not good. No, you just didn't have a good at bat. That doesn't mean that you're not good. And there's a difference. If I hang a curveball and give up a game-winning homer, I'm not a bad pitcher. I made a bad pitch. There's two different mentalities. You make a bad pitch, you can sleep on that and be like, okay, I'm going to fix it. You telling yourself you're a bad pitcher, you're making that an identity. And when you make it an identity, it's really hard to recover from, because the mind is super, super powerful, right? So for me, man, if I had to tell a young man or a young lady, listen, here's what we're going to deal with. We're going to deal with the fact that you will fail in sports. It is inevitable. The ones that go farther are the ones that say, how do I use my failure as a teachable moment, not as an actual failure I need to quit. And if you look at failure as a teachable moment, and that is all it is, you're going to go a lot farther in your sport, because you're going to push yourself to get better. And then you're going to go a lot farther in life, because You're not a failure of a mom. You're not a failure of a dad. You're not a failure of a husband or wife, or you're not a failure of an employee. You just had a bad day, and you can get better. How do I get better? And how do I own that and live in that vulnerability? You start doing that, things will change pretty for the better in every area of your life. And that's kind of what I want to try to focus on. It's how I had an identity crisis in sports. I have a great story I want to talk about of my time in Denver and changed my career and just figuring out who I was. And it was meeting a homeless girl on the street. And I'm going to talk about that. It's going to be awesome. And I'm super excited for it.
Well, I wish I could get you to coach me up before my big golf trip to Bandon Dunes. I know I've got good golf in there somewhere, but my problem is I don't think about the putt I missed necessarily afterwards. I think about it before I even step up and miss. Thank goodness, Jeremy, this is not about me. As I look at your resume, you really did bounce around quite a bit until you found a home and success with the Giants. Talk about just that whole, what that taught you as far as, I'm sure it's got to be tough when you get traded from a team or you get dealt. Ego aside, right? Like, hey, the Rockies are saying they don't want me and they're sending me to the Giants, or the Rockies are upset because you've taken money to go with the Giants. But talking about that and finding that fit and understanding, as you talked about, those uncontrollables, but still finding your success.
Yeah, you have to know that when one team doesn't want you, that doesn't mean none of them want you. Or what I had to learn, so I got traded from the Royals to the Rockies. And honestly, I wanted the trade. Okay. I didn't necessarily want the trade to the Rockies because it's like going from,
it's not
sea level to, the ball just doesn't come down. So, and I wasn't having a stellar year anyway, and that's not where you go get confidence, right? So, I think that for me, when you go from team to team, you have to recognize the game is still the same. The game is the exact same thing. It's still 60 feet, 6 inches. Your face, the strike zone's still the same. Like you put a different uniform on, and the guys that, for me, how I looked at it is it's a fresh start. So I changed my uniform number from 48 to 41 when I left the Royals and went to the Rockies, just because I needed a fresh perspective. I actually hated the game of baseball at that time. I didn't like it. I had a good early experience with the Royals. I did not have a good latter experience with them. So, nothing against them. We lost all the time and I didn't have a good role, right? So for me, I just looked at it as a new, fresh start and somebody else that can teach me. And so for me, when I go to a new job or a new destination, I don't look at it as I'm not wanted or needed. I'm looking at it as, okay, I've got a chance to learn from somebody different and maybe I'll click with that person, because we don't always see eye to eye, or we don't always hear things right, or we just don't get the right communication in the spot we're in. And so for me, I learned that with coaches. I've even learned that. I've told my son, hey, if you're not understanding from one coach, try the other. Just go and say, hey, I know what he's trying to tell me. I'm not seeing it. Is there a way I'm missing it? You got to be communicating. It is all about communicating when it comes to life, especially sports. And so for me, man, when I got past, spent 2 years at the Rockies, had a great second season. They never even called me that off season. And then they didn't even think, and then they thought I was lying when I was telling them what my other deals on the table were.
Right.
And they said, go ahead and take it if you're going to get that. And I took it. And next thing you know, they didn't know what to do. They're like, uh-oh, yeah, I took it. And then I went to the Reds for a year. And then I went to the Giants, and it was the best thing ever for me. And the way I looked at it is it's all a part of the journey. You don't know. Your path is going to take you where it needs to take you. If you keep pushing, I kept pushing. I kept trying to get better. I kept trying to learn. I used my failures and I used them as teachable moments. And then I finally found my way over in San Francisco, and I failed over there as well. I just failed a little differently. I had a lot more success. And obviously we had rings to show for it. But everything that I learned as a veteran, when I played in those games, I learned from my teachable moments. So I was in some of the same situations that I'd failed a lot in. And I felt like I could handle them then because I've been here before.
Right.
I know what mistakes I've made in this. And I also know where I've had success. I'm going to focus on the successful areas of this moment. What have I done in the past to be successful? I already know what I've done to be unsuccessful in it. And I relax. And sometimes it's just grinding it out. It's just getting through it, never quitting. So never quitting on just learning about your controllables and your teachable moments is super important. And that's really what got me through my career.
Jeremy Affeldt joining me, JB Mathers. Talk about marrying the two, the personal success and then also team success, which you had. Three World Series titles. You also had success making it to a World Series with the Rockies. But talk about that fine line of not only being successful yourself, but that marriage between team success.
Yeah, and baseball is a little different, because it is such an individual sport. You are a team, and that is correct. It's a marriage. It's an interesting one because we're going out there to win as a team. But my short Crawford can't throw the ball for me. Buster can't say, "Hey, I'll take the ball and put it to this part of the plate. I'll call it. You have to do it."
Right.
And I can't catch a ball for the center fielder. I can't do that. So once it's in my area, it's my controllable. After that, it's not. You have to trust your team. But that's also so important. So the team that I link it to, honestly, for me, I hang out with a lot of special forces guys and Navy SEALs guys, and I talk to them about how they do team, and they do it some of the same way. They're a little different. They got real bullets. I'm throwing a baseball, but
they're counting on other people, right?
They trust the guy to the left of them, and then their guy, their guy to the right, trust them. Hey, that's what you have to have, that trust. So I've got to be able to trust that the guys on my field that are behind me are prepared every pitch to make a play. And their job is to make me feel confident that they're prepared to make a play. I need to throw a strike. That'll make me feel more comfortable to throw strikes. Now it's my job to make them feel comfortable that I'm going to throw a strike and I'm going to keep them moving, and they don't have to sit around a long time, and we're going to win this game. And for me, that's how it works. And if you're a hitter, man, you get up there, your guy on base, man, he's trying to steal a bag. Maybe he's trying to get the pitcher to rush, so he'll elevate a fastball, and you can hit it pretty hard somewhere. Everybody's working. We're bunting, we're stealing, we're moving guys over, we're sacking them in, and we're trusting that, hey, this guy's not going to try to hit a homer here. He's going to sacrifice his at bat to get an RBI. Like, that's what it's all about, is we're playing for each other. And that's, to me, sports in every way, shape, or form. In football, like how I watch my son play, man, he has to do his job, and his job isn't necessarily, he has to hit a guy. He's offensive line, and he's got to put a guy in a place, not necessarily because the guy's going to run the ball through that hole, but he's trying to shift the play to keep certain things working a certain direction. And if he doesn't go the right way, if he pushes the guy the wrong way, or he moves the guy the wrong, it could go really bad. You're trusting everybody to do their job. And to me, individual work how I got to work to know my deal, but knowing that everything that I do affects my next guy. And to me, that's life in general. And you can learn a lot through team sport. And I think that's why team sports are super important for kids to play, whether they play professionally or not. It's super important for them to play, to know how to handle themselves in their future as just being in the workplace.
Absolutely. I think you look at so many employers when you quote unquote get in the real world, and they really want that athletic background because they know you know how to work in a team setting. I just want to scratch the surface because I know you folks are going to get the real deal with Jeremy. You get a chance to meet Jeremy, talk to him, get your picture, autographs, whatever you want. What was it like being in the city with 3 world championships? I mean, you guys, mostly Giants fans up here on the North Coast. I mean, talk about rock star status. Just what was that like being not only in the city, but Northern California when you guys were really the toast of the town?
Yeah, I didn't really understand it until we won the first one. And when we won the first one, we really didn't understand what we did. We come home, you fly in, and you see people lined up on the freeway at 3, 4 in the morning, or whenever we flew in from Texas, waiting for our bus to drive down the freeway and just be, holding Giants flags. Coming into the town, and the amount of people that were lined up around the stadium that early was pretty incredible. And then I remember that was when we were doing the whole fear the beard thing with Willie.
That's right.
And none of us shaved. So I mean, I don't mind having a beard, obviously, but it gets too long, starts to get itchy.
Well, can Buster Posey even grow a beard? I mean, he's got that baby face.
Not at that time. He definitely couldn't grow a beard. He was so young. But we were over there scratching like we had fleas over there, and so I remember the first thing I did is I'm getting a shave. I'm shaving. I got to get it off. And I'm laying on the barber chair, and the lady's got a straight razor to my neck. And this lady walks in, and she notices me, and she starts crying, and she starts kissing me on the forehead mid shave. And the lady's like, and my barber's like, "Ma'am, you you can't, I've got to straighten you can't do that. For one, it's personal space. Like, you can't start kissing
There's a
him.
lot of no-nos going on here.
But she was so excited because she's like, you don't understand. I've been here for 50 years waiting for this, and it finally happened. And just people just lost their minds,
Oh,
you know? And so you were like, man, you didn't realize we as a team love that we won a world championship because it's our dream. Every kid that wants to be a baseball player dreams of winning a World Series. It just is what it is. But we didn't realize the effect it has on a city, like what it actually does to a community of people when their team wins it all. Like, it pushed us to want to be better. And then when we won the second one and we swept Detroit, it was like, oh, I can't believe we just swept Detroit. But you see the excitement again, but then what you started to see is almost like a kind of like a following. It was like everybody hears about Yankee Nation or Boston Nation. It became Giants Nation. Everywhere we went that next season in 2013, it felt like we were playing at home. I mean, people were coming because it was not like you won a World Series one time. Like, yeah, you didn't have the best team, so maybe it was luck. 2010, we were not favored in any way, shape, or form.
Nothing.
And so 2012, now people are like, oh, wait. And then we go 2014 and we're back in Kansas City, and we win that in 7 games. And that was obviously the most high stress situation I've ever been in.
Well, and for you, with the team that brought you into the big league. So, I mean, it must have been even more.
That's right. It was crazy. Like, that game 7, my last, I mean, that was I hadn't been really back on that field since. I think we were there earlier that year, but literally I've not been back on that field since the year I got traded. And I'll tell you, and to end the season as a champion, when I left as feeling like a complete loser, hated the game, there's no better great circle of life than that. And that is probably the one that meant the most to me.
Okay.
But it was just leaving there, going back home and seeing who knows how many people in that city hall. And then I got to give a speech and just talk to everybody. For me, I think that's where it's set in stone, where I think you're going to have these Giants fans, the ones that know the game will say, I don't care if they don't win for another 20 years. They're a dynasty. This is my team.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is such a good feeling to walk around that town, and not the rock star status of, the bow thing. It's the, hey, Jeremy, hey, how are you? Great. How are you? Good. Shaking hands, still going in that city, people giving you fist bumps as you go by. And it's not that it's like I need that to feel good about myself. It's just the understanding and the reminder of the impact that you made in a community to be a part of that you're walking on a street and people are still giving you fist bumps. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, I think I'll never forget when you guys won it in 2010. I was up at Six Rivers Brewery at McKinleyville watching my buddy Tag. He was in tears because his uncle was sick and dying, and he was a huge Giants fan, and he was so happy that his uncle got to see the Giants win World Series before he passed. My buddy Matt, who's a firefighter in Alameda, after you guys won the second one, he was at the parade. He had one too many adult beverages. He now has a Giants tattoo on his posterior for the rest of his life. Okay. So, yeah, I know people can get a little wacky, and I can only imagine the stories you guys are living it and you hear. But how happy were you? I'm sure there were times you thought about, I'm done, whether it was in high school, the minors, the pros, I need to walk away. And then you're sitting there, game 7, get that win, realizing, and I'm sure a message you share with young people all the time, that's why you don't quit.
That's exactly why you don't quit. I did. In high school, didn't ever want to quit. I was so successful. I didn't even know what it was like to lose. I got humbled really, really quickly in pro ball.
Okay.
Real quickly, because all of a sudden you walk into a team or against a team that everybody is you or better. You're not going to throw a fastball up there. And I remember my first time I threw a fastball thinking, I just blow it by everybody anyway. Threw a fastball up there, and some 16-year-old kid from Dominican put it off the freaking fence. And I was like, what the? And they were like, hey, man, these kids have been facing 90-mile-an-hour fastballs since they were 12. You're not getting that by them. You got to set them up. Like, you just got a reality check, right? You got this huge reality check. And I wanted to quit then because I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to make it because I didn't know how to fail. I did not know how to lose. I
First time
never
you've been
did.
exposed to it.
Yeah. And it was tough. My dad, who was in the Air Force, flew B-52s. He's a bombardier radar navigator for B-52s. He had to walk me through so much of, hey man, I busted a check ride. I felt like I almost caused a war one time because I messed up on one of my drops, like on a practice area, like he had to tell me all these things of like, listen, it happens. It happens, and you've got to be able to grind it out. No one has ever been able to sleep good at night saying, well, I wanted to do this, but I got hit around one time, so I quit. That's never going to sit well. So you go until they say, let them tell you, time's up, man. Like, hey, appreciate your time. Take that jersey off your back. Hey, man, you made it further than most people get. Be on your way. Like, then you know. And then when I got to the big leagues, I did that and I pitched the same way. When they tell me I'm done, I'm done. And I was fortunate enough to play long enough to where I said, I'm done. And you will get to that point in your career in any job where you walk away on your own terms.
Well, you're fortunate. Not a lot of pro athletes get to say that.
That's right. And I'm so blessed. Like every time I look, people like, do you miss it? And I'm like, I missed the playoffs, but I retired because I didn't want to do the 162 gauntlet and I got 3 boys to race. So I don't miss that. My decision was the right decision, but I do miss the playoff atmosphere because there's nothing like it. But you can't just go back for it. Not everybody can be like Roger Clemens and just come back and pitch home games and go to the playoffs. Some of us have to actually play the whole season.
Well, I mean, look, Barry Bonds is my all-time favorite, and he got shown the door. So I mean, it's rare air.
Yeah, it is. It's super rare. And man, I'm okay with it. I didn't leave the game bitter. Some guys leave the game bitter and angry and frustrated. I didn't leave like that. I'm not mad at the game at all. If I'm mad at the game now because all the weird rurules they got going on.
Well, and we'll go down that rabbit hole another time because between the pitch clock and the bases and the runner on second, all that
That's
sort of
right.
stuff. But I do want to, before we turn you loose, and again, Saturday night, the Humboldt Celebrity Sports Auction benefit, all proceeds go to Lumberjack scholarships. And
Awesome.
we know how huge that is for the student athletes, whether it's, a chance to get in so they can get that meal, so they can get that education and get that boost they need. And then selfishly, from our fan perspective and the radio guys like me, the more scholarships, the more W's. And it's a lot more fun and sound a lot better when you get those wins. Jeremy Affeldt joining us. Hardest hitter, or who was the guy that put the most fear in you in the bigs?
Man, hardest hitter. You know what? The guy that had the best batting average was Adrian Gonzalez. He's a lefty, but he just would flare it over short on me. He didn't even try to do anything. He just tried to let the ball and he did. He had the best batting average. It was frustrating, but he didn't really scare me, right? Great hitter, but he didn't scare me.
Players weren't going to keep you up at night.
Yeah. And some of the biggest names in the game didn't always scare me because they let you set them up. They're like, hey, you throw in this area, I'm not going to get a hit, but you throw it in this area, I'm going to put it off the wall. So like you kind of were like, all right, I can deal with that. But I'm trying to think of like one of the guys that I just absolutely hated to face at any moment, man. Honestly, I didn't like call-ups because they would hit balls off your forehead because they were just swinging, right? So you threw a fastball, they're hitting line drives. But I think for me, if I got brought into a game, one of the guys that I did not like was Manny Ramirez. And because Manny Ramirez would set you up. So you think you got him, he'd swing and miss by an absolute mile at a pitch. And then you got to think, did he do that to get that pitch again? So now you're just straight, you don't know. And he was such a smart hitter. I really didn't like facing him. I never did with Boston or LA. It was easier to face with LA and still it was hard, but I really didn't like facing him there. And then I would probably say the other guy that was probably the toughest at bat because there is no setting him up in his prime was Albert Pujols. There's no way you could set that guy up because the only pitch he didn't really hit real well was a changeup, and good hitters don't hit those well. Changeups are tough. A good changeup and I would throw like a Fosh. And that was the only way I could get. And then even then, he'd hit a rocket right at short. It wasn't like like he wouldn't miss hit it. He was a tough at bat because it felt like he knew he could react to in, out, up, down at any moment. He was such
Right.
a balanced hitter, and he was going to get you. And for me, he was probably the most dangerous hitter in his prime.
Jerry, two more before I cut you loose. I don't think Shohei Ohtani is getting enough love. I mean, I think what this guy
Oh,
is doing is absolutely freakish. I mean, the guy is a freak on the mound. He's a freak at the plate. As somebody who played at the highest level, how impressed are you what this guy's doing?
it's all to me. I don't even know how it's possible. The game is so hard mentally to pitch in an ace role, let alone go and by the way, I'm going to hit in the 4 hole like every game. Like guys are like that's a tough deal for me because I look at that and I'm like, it's not easy to hit by any means. And then you got to be able to be focused as a pitcher and execute and work on your craft. So now you're working on actually you're not working as a hitter like you would as a starter in the old National League when they had, when they had to hit for themselves.
Right.
That's just guys taking swings so they don't blow out an oblique when they're swinging. So they're getting their muscles ready. This dude's actually working on his swing to be a huge part of a lineup. Like you are expected to hit 35 homers. And by the way, you're going to face off against this team in 5 days and it's another ace and you got to throw 102 on the black. Like for me, it's too, the guy's a $500 million player in today's market,
Oh,
at
absolutely.
least. The market's going to be weird. But two, the reason he doesn't get enough love is frankly, I'm not bashing. It just is what it is. It's Anaheim. That's why Trout. Yeah, Trout's one of the best players to play the game ever, and I don't hear about him like I hear about Jeter or Alex or Manny or any Big Poppy. These guys that played on the East Coast that's because the baseball is over there, the market's over there. If Ohtani was on the East Coast,
Oh, if he played for the Yankees,
dude, yeah,
they'd already, people would be like Babe Ruth who? It would be all
yeah,
a Shohei. All right,
it was
speaking of
crazy.
kind of lost and sad things for our junior loose, we have something in common. A love for those late 80 Oakland Athletic teams with Dave Stewart and Hendu and Ricky Henderson and Dennis Eckersley,
Gallego,
Bob Welsh. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I think still name the starting lineups. But with that said, Canseco and McGuire, they were the show. I remember making my dad take me to BP. I couldn't wait for BP and sit in the bleachers. I mean, my dad could be like, "Hey, we got front row behind home plate." And I'd be, "No way, we got to go sit in the bleachers." Because there was a chance of getting, a Canseco or McGuire home ball. But what are some of your fond memories, or what was that like being a young guy in Merced, watching the Bash Brothers?
Man, I remember going over there, the same thing, the A's game, and my dad would always get the nosebleeds where because at that time the upper deck was available. Now
Right.
they don't even open the upper deck.
Right. Mount
But
Davis.
but I would watch, and if they hit a pop up in the infield, you thought it was a homer because you couldn't see the trajectory, right? So everybody's like, "Oh, awesome!" But man, I remember one time my dad got the first level, right in the shade, the overhang. No idea why he got those, but he brought me to a game. I was so in awe. I was too much in awe. It even asked for an autograph. I went down close and I could see him, and I was just, my eyes were just, I was like, man, these guys are massive. They're hitting homers like this is crazy. And I just remember, I think I want to say, I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Dave Stewart was pitching that day. And I thought Mark McGuire hit a couple homers. And so I was like, this is the best day ever. And I looked at my dad and I was like, hey, Dad, I'm going to play here one day. And my dad looked over at me, go get him, kid. Like, we can say to your kid, no, you're not, like he just is like, awesome, man. And I was just super excited to play and just be a part of that. And you just see these guys and you're just mesmerized. And then I remember in 2002 walking in the Oakland A's Coliseum from center field from the bus dropped us off, and I had my Nokia phone that had like the snake game, where you had to have 2, 4, 6, 8, and that was all you had. I remember I got on this Nokia phone and I called my mom and dad's house, and I'm standing in center field, and my dad answers, and he still had a dial-up. I don't think he had a cell phone until about 5 years ago. So he still had his little dial-up phone. And he's like, hello. And I'm like, Dad. He's like, hey man. I was like, hey, you know where I'm at right now? He's like, yeah, you're in Oakland. I'm like, Dad, I'm standing in center field and I see the very seats we were sitting in where I said I'm gonna play here one day. And Dad, tonight I pitch. He hung up on me. And I called him back, and my mom answers the phone, and she's like, hey Jeremy. I'm like, hey, what happened? She's like, well, Dad's crying. He's not gonna let you hear him cry. He had to drop the phone. It was such a surreal moment for me. Like, I'm in the same stadium that I made this. I mean, but that's what sports is all about, man. Giving kids a chance. These kids, the Humboldt stuff, what they're trying to do, it is not necessarily that every one of those kids is going to make it to their ultimate dream job of playing professional sports, but it's giving them the chance to try to get there. That's the concept, and so that means a lot to me, that stadium.
And I think it's huge. And I think it's great, Jeremy, because I get frustrated when you hear like some of these professors or people, well, these kids aren't going pro, this, that, but I think, what you said really at the beginning of this interview was it's setting you up for life, whether you make it or not, because most aren't going to make it. But as somebody who played, starting in T-ball and got a chance to play football at Humboldt, the opportunities it gives you and what you learn on the field, your teammates, working with people and, of all different economic backgrounds, social backgrounds, all that sort of stuff. It's such a great thing. And I'm just so ecstatic that you're going to be up here Saturday night. And I'll leave you with this. And what would you say to people who have a decision to make on what they're going to do with their Saturday night and, why it's going to be not only a benefit for Humboldt, but more importantly, entertainment value and a great chance to meet Jeremy Affeldt and hear some of his legendary Giant stories. And, I'm sure I can just tell you're a super approachable guy. So whether it's, the speech on stage or whether people just want to come by with an adult beverage and say hi.
Yeah, I love doing these things. I think the most important part about these scenarios is I get to talk about some pretty fun stories that, like it's not like they're always talked about, in the media. And so I'm going to share some of why I am the way I am and how important sports was to me, but especially baseball, especially being under Bruce Bochy and what I learned from him. But then also, man, to come out, like I said earlier on this interview, community is super important. And what we learned as athletes is what it means to a community when we win. But what the reverse of that is the electricity that a community brings when the athlete feels the support of the community. And in this situation, this is where I think you show that. I think you come out, we'll have some fun times. We'll tell some stories. I'll bring some concepts to life that I think are super important and why it's important for athletes to be around good education and good knowledge and good understanding with good coaches. But I think it's super important for people to show that I want to be a part of this fundraiser. I want to be a part of this because I want to provide the opportunity for these kids to become somebody in life, whether it be a pro athlete or at least get an education to take them a long way in life. And to me, that's what a community is all about. And that's why it's important to come to these things. It's just community. It's being a part of it.
And nothing like that Humboldt community. And well, enjoy your trip to the North Coast, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, get your tickets quick. Only some few seats available. So get it before it sells out. Go to the Poly Humboldt Athletic website and you can see Mr. Affeldt in all its glory. And you guys know, you've been to these events. They're just a blast. And it's about the student athletes and it's about our community and making it better. And so, Jeremy, on behalf of the Humboldt Nation up here, thank you so much for spending your time and your weekend and coming up and making this community better.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Appreciate the time.